Somehow I managed to forget that yesterday was Thursday, and hence I completely forgot to do the Thursday sports Q&A. So I'm doing it today. Thanks to you guys that submitted your questions. Also, thanks for the fantasy football questions. Again, you still got another week and a half or so of fantasy football drafting. Hopefully you haven't even started drafting yet if you paid attention to any part of my fantasy football draft tips series. Which I'll still have another couple of videos on in the next day or two to come. I'll also do some fantasy football positional rankings. I'm going to try and cram those out in the next couple of days. And make sure you also check out my team-by-team preview of the 2014 NFL season all on this channel. But let's get started with this Q&A. Mark Linus Jr. asked, behind LeBron and Peyton Manning, who does ESPN have the third biggest hard-on for? Tiger Woods, Johnny Manziel, or Bryce Harper? I'm surprised you didn't throw Tebow in there, but Tebow is maybe a little less relevant at the moment. At the current moment, probably Johnny Manziel. Back several years ago, the hard-on wasn't even that hard for LeBron and Peyton Manning because they needed to save that Viagra juice for guys like Barry Bonds and Roger Clemens and the steroid shit. I'd also say that they've had an incredibly hard-on over the years for Alex Rodriguez, especially with the steroid shit again. But Johnny Football at the moment out of those other three names that you mentioned. Chris is nice asked, is Michael Crabtree a mediocre receiver? No, he's not quite the receiver I envisioned him being coming out of Texas Tech, but I would hardly say he's mediocre. If he's mediocre, then I'll take 2 or 3 of him on my football team. I'd love to have that mediocre wide receiving crew. Twin Strike 3 asked 2 questions. First, who's your bounce back team and player for 2014? Player? Maybe a Doug Martin. I'd say maybe Doug Martin. Some people might look at quarterback and they might say somebody like an Eli Manning, and I couldn't disagree more. Some might say Jay Cutler, and I would say it's not so much a bounce back because what's he bouncing back from? You know, first and foremost, he has to stay healthy. Do I expect him to produce more in 2014? Yes, but I wouldn't quite call him a bounce back player. In terms of bounce back team, I'd probably go with Atlanta Falcons. That would be my team that I would view as a bounce back team. I'm confident in that. Is Arian Foster worth the risk drafting coming off of back surgery, a hamstring injury throughout the preseason, and a new offense? It depends on your league, your situation, your position in the draft. I wouldn't touch him with the 10-foot pole in round 1, that's for sure. But as you start going into round 2 and round 3, you got to see how the board's playing out. You got to see who's available at what positions. You know, I'm not going to completely say no, and I'm not going to completely say yes. It all is determinant upon your individual situation that you're facing in your fantasy football draft. Very simple. Keys 10 asked, do you think my Cleveland Browns are 100% behind Johnny Manziel? No, because if they were, they'd be starting him week 1 against Pittsburgh. Plain and simple. I think they believe in Manziel to a certain degree. They have their trepidations and concerns about him. But I think eventually they'll get 100% behind him. Also, do you think they're overrating Hoyer? I don't think they're overrating Hoyer. They might view Hoyer as the better option to help them win games right now, which head coach Mike Patine and the rest of that coaching staff, they have a responsibility to those players, the other members of the coaching staff, the organization, the fan base, to do everything they can to try and win now. You got to do what you can to give your team the best option to win right now. And if they feel that Brian Hoyer gives them a better, excuse me, stupid fucking stopwatch, I can't figure out how to shut off the alarm. As far as Hoyer starting, if they feel he gives them a better opportunity to win right now, then that's the guy to go with. It's one of these things. I don't necessarily believe in the notion anymore that rookie quarterbacks need to sit and learn or shouldn't start right away because recent history suggests otherwise. It all depends on the situation. And looking at Manziel and Hoyer, if Cleveland thought they were pretty much even Steven, then they'd be stupid not to go with Manziel. But if they think Hoyer has an edge in any way, shape, or form, and they think Hoyer is a better option at this point to help them win games, then Hoyer needs to be the guy. I don't think they're overrating him. They're not calling him the next Tom Brady or anything like that, at least I don't think. Van Raleigh asks, what's the greatest professional play you've ever seen? Greatest professional play I've ever seen, I'd probably actually go with the sequence, and that's Michael Jordan in Game 6 of the 1998 NBA Finals against the Utah Jazz. You're up 3-2, but things aren't looking great. You're down 3 points with about 43 seconds to go. You're in the Delta Center. The crowd's going crazy. Noise levels over 100 decibels. Michael Jordan, 3 straight plays of just pure greatness. First the layup, then the steal, and then the shot. You look at the layup. What was so great about that, and what really set that up to be the thing that turned the crux towards the Bulls in that game and ultimately helped them win that series, was Jordan could have tried to force a three and tried to tie the game because the Bulls were down three at that point in time coming off of Stockton's big three that he hit. But Jordan had enough basketball savvy and intelligence to understand that a three was not necessary, that if he could get a quick bucket and a two, then it'd only be a 1 point lead for the Jazz. And the Bulls were very confident in their defense to be able to get one stop, and that was what he needed to do. So he caught the inbounds pass, scored on the layup in about 4.5 seconds. Tremendous. Now you've created the 2-for-1 opportunity that you needed to create. Go back down to the defensive end. Here's Malone posting up on Rodman. Stockton's over here getting ready to feed into the post. Hornacek's going to clear out away from Malone. Well, Jordan realizes that ball is going to Karl Malone. It's not going cross court to Hornacek at this point, so he doesn't clear. And he dumps down and doubles Malone. As soon as that ball is passed in by Stockton, Malone didn't have a chance. He never saw it coming. Stockton never saw it coming. And those are two Hall of Fame players that are being duped by the greatest player of all time. He gets the steal. He brings the ball up court. No timeout. He's going to take it. Waits for the floor to clear out and everybody take their positions. And then he gets Brian Russell one-on-one, and good luck with that. Crosses him over, the little pat on the butt or the leg, and the shot. So in that sequence, he understood his game situations on all three plays, actually. But to get that layup when a lot of other players would have went for a three and could have potentially cost their team a game right there, he extended the game for his team. And he did it in like 4.5 seconds, which was tremendous. Showed great basketball intelligence. Then the steal, again, incredibly cerebral play on the defensive end, understanding his situation, understanding the moment, understanding that that had to be what needed to be done at that time. And then, of course, coming down and getting the shot. And, you know, the great thing about Jordan with that last shot is, too, a lot of players in that situation might have forced, might have rushed, might have passed the ball. They might have sat there and tried to attack right away. Jordan did it. He understood that this was going to be his moment. This was going to be his shot. He had one last little flurry to try and finish off the Jazz. And he even had the patience to sit there and kind of turn his back a little bit to Brian Russell and wait for Rodman and Kukoc and everybody else to clear out and create spacing on the floor. Just tremendous. Greatest sequence that I've ever seen in sports. Matt Meffe2 asked, do you consider New York more of a baseball town, hockey town, or basketball town? Since I don't live in New York, it's hard for me to say for sure. I'm sure if you're a Mets fan, it's probably a football town. Maybe a hockey town. A basketball town? Ugh. I mean, they still love the Knicks there. Yeah, I guess you've got the Nets there too, technically. But the Knicks are still New York City in terms of basketball. But the Knicks have been so boo-boo for so many years, I don't know if you could consider it a Knicks town anymore. There's an argument to be made that maybe it's a Rangers town. If you're a Yankees fan, then it's a baseball town. I think it kind of depends on who you're a fan of. I don't know if that city has one team that's more easily identifiable with them than anything, except for maybe the New York Yankees when it comes to baseball. So maybe it is ultimately a baseball town. Jason Quinn, 1992, asked me a question about this. It's a 10-team PPR, point per reception league. You get 2 quarterbacks, 2 wide receivers, 2 running backs, a tight end, a flex position, defense, special teams, a kicker, and 6 bench players. Any draft strategy, thinking wide receiver, running back, quarterback, wide receiver, depending on my pick. Okay, sorry again about that alarm. I'm going to break this fucking thing in a second. Jason Quinn, 1992. Watch my fantasy football draft tips series. At no point in time do I advocate taking a quarterback anywhere near that fucking early. The 3rd round? No! No. I'll give you a scenario here. If you're drafting 10th in that 10-team league, and I don't know what pick you have, you might not know what pick you have, but just to give you an example, you have the last pick in round 1, first pick in round 2, last pick of round 3, first pick of round 4. I might advocate taking either running back or wide receiver with that 10th pick, then sandwiching right back with either a running back, wide receiver, or even Jimmy Graham. Now, I could sit there and tell you, maybe to sit there and go wide receiver, running back, and then come back in the next sequence and go wide receiver and then maybe tight end. That would be another strategy right there. Wait till the last round to draft a kicker, second to last round to draft a defense or special teams, and wait until at least the middle of the draft before you sit there and start entertaining thoughts of a quarterback. It's not worth it. You're giving up too much in too many other positions, passing up on too many other players for a quarterback that just isn't necessary at that point in time. I promise you. And I'll put it this way. When you look at last year's fantasy football quarterback scoring, as I talked about in the quarterback video in the fantasy football draft tips series, Andy Dalton was in the top 10. In fact, I think he was top 5 in terms of fantasy football scoring. Nobody drafted Andy Dalton in the 3rd or 4th round, so why the fuck would you sit there and draft a quarterback so early? It just makes no sense at all. UF Gator Chomp 93 closes out this Q&A with 2 questions. Which second-round pick in the 2014 NFL Draft will be the bigger steal in history? Marquise Lee to the Jags or Derek Carr to the Raiders? Marquise Lee to the Jags, and I don't even think it's close. I don't. I'm not a huge Derek Carr fan, and you must not be either because you didn't spell Derek right. Sorry, Dylan. I had to do that. But I'll go Marquise Lee to the Jags. And if given another chance, can Mark Sanchez be a successful starter on another team in the right situation? Perhaps. I wouldn't rule that out as a possibility. Let's face it, the Jets never really gave him a lot of help. You know, you take a quarterback, you trade up a bunch to go get him, and then you choose to help him out by drafting defensive players every damn year afterwards in the 1st round. Makes no fucking sense at all. Sanchez was in a bad situation in New York in terms of the growth and development of him as a player. And if he was in a better situation, like right now, he's in a really good situation in Philadelphia because he's got a good system around him. He's got talent around him. If Nick Foles gets hurt or Nick Foles scuffles or struggles at all, and they get to the point where they think they might need to make a change, and Sanchez might be able to step in and might be able to do some decent things for Philadelphia. Anything is possible. Just saying. And if you say, well, there's no way in hell that could ever happen, well, I can guarantee you a long, long time ago, I can remember when Trent Green tore his ACL in the preseason. Everybody said, well, the Rams are going to suck again. They'll end up with the number 1 overall pick. Kurt Warner stepped in and they won the Super Bowl that year. Just saying. So thanks again for submitting your questions for this Q&A. Like I said, a lot of content coming up in the next couple days on this channel, so stay tuned.